Now, let us look at the psychological dimension of three main energy currents, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. I have explained in my two previous sessions in great detail about the origin of energy currents, development of chakras, and unique influence and effects the energy currents have on our nervous system, brain, and emotional life. In this particular session, I will pick up three energy currents and their impact on our psychological aspect of ourselves. And these three energy currents are called Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Because the entire Hatha Yoga, entire Kundalini Yoga, entire science of chakras is based on the functions of these three main energy currents. There are thousands and thousands, even maybe millions of energy currents. At its peak period in the history, yoga identified 72,000 energy currents. And I'm talking about peak period, meaning there was a time when the science was like one of the central part of the study and learning in Indian culture. Before religion, or let's say dogmatic, sectarian, religious attitudes began to influence and dominate yoga, and before the materialistic approach to life really dominated Indian culture, this yogic study was a very important part of one's own personal study. That time they had identified 72,000 different nadis. Out of those 72,000, they started looking at the basis of the prominence, at the basis of the dominance, at the basis of unique characteristics of these nadis. They identified just, let's say, 100 or 200 nadis. Then they did another process. They went through another process of what you call elimination, and then they settled down with 14 main nadis, energy currents. Now they identified only just three nadis, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. Ida corresponds to the left side of our body, left side of our nostril, and Pingala corresponds to the right side of our body, right side of our nostril. Where and how these originate, there are so many millions of confusing and contradictory thoughts and contradictory ideas. The point is here that there are millions of waves of energy and consciousness throughout our body. To look at the general nature of all the energy waves and put it only in three major categories, you can say left, right, and central. Left, right, and central. So the left side of the energy current is called Ida, right side of the energy current called Pingala, and the central one is called Sushumna. To really look at to look at some of the major functions of these three nadis, left, right, and the central, let's look at how it corresponds to our left nostril, right nostril, and central nostril, and how it affects our entire system and behavior in our body. And therefore, that can give you an idea why breathing is so important. Why concentration on the tip of your nostril is so important. Why breathing in a particular way is so important in terms of managing your own moods and behaviors. So, there is very unique characteristic of the energy currents that flows through your right nostril or through your right side of your spine and the right nostril, and very unique quality and characteristic of the other energy current that flows along with your left side of your spine and through your left nostril. What is that? The right side of the energy has a characteristic of the sun. The left side has the characteristic of the moon. The sun and moon have always been described as masculine and feminine. So the right side of our body and the energy current corresponding to it refers to active, masculine, solar kind of energy current. Whereas the left side, it's the feminine, lunar, and passive. And always remember that these are energy currents. They are not like thick, stiff wall that they stand right in their place and never unite each other, never mingle into each other, and never embrace each other. They are not like that. They are currents, they are waves. Always coming, touching, thrashing into each other, and again separating. Influencing each other, supporting each other, and all these two major energy currents, masculine and feminine, solar and lunar, active and passive, they are constantly influencing, merging, embracing, uniting each other, and creating an environment where our overall two major aspects of our personality, that is gentle and stern. Okay. Very loving, kind, and never forgiving, disciplinarian, judgmental aspect of ourselves. All they're constantly merging, touching, embracing each other. That's what life is all about. No? It's never like that you are very stern kind of person and throughout your life you are just stern. There are times when you also become quite loving and kind too. Similarly, at every moment, this phenomena is happening. And in the center, there is central energy current, completely calm, tranquil, balanced. That's called Sushumna. I'll give you a very wonderful, meaningful example of this phenomena, that how these three energy currents, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, correspond to each other, influence each other, influence our nervous system, influence our brain, influence our behavior, and influence our total body-mind, interaction. So, here is our right nostril and here is our left nostril. The electrical potential of our right nostril and the left nostril, they are quite different from each other. You may have noticed that when you are struggling with the excess mucus, when you have cough, cold, and congestion, when your nostrils are congested, at that time, if your right nostril is congested, that is when your sickness is severe. And how do you feel? Have you ever noticed that you are congested, but somehow, for some reason, momentarily even, when your right nostril opens, how light you feel at that time? It's suddenly half of your sickness is gone. But that is not necessarily true if you have fever. During the fever, if your right nostril is completely open, that even increases your fever because it's already solar nostril, solar energy channel. That is the grossest description of their being solar and lunar. But here is something very unique. Even in general, when you are not sick, you are living a healthy life, there is nostril shift going on. Somewhere between 90 to 120 minutes of intervals, your nostrils are shifting. One nostril is relatively more active than the other. Within 90 minutes time, 100 minutes time, maximum 120 minutes time, let's say, your nostril dominance changes. That is, if it is happening somewhere between 90 to 100 minutes time, it means you are a healthy person. Relatively, your right nostril is more open and left nostril is less open. 90 minutes later, it completely switches. It means you are a healthy person. If this kind of switch takes, let's say, 2 hours, 3 hours, it means something has gone wrong in you. This continuous embracing of solar and lunar energy has slowed down, or they are now on different path, on different track. And the life of balance and harmony is now no longer there. By watching this kind of phenomena, a yogi can predict, that within 1 week, if this kind of phenomena continues for 1 week, 2 weeks, a yogi can tell you that in general, that you are really getting closer and closer to a quite severe, quite serious sickness. Because your nostrils are no longer changing their patterns. Your breathing is no longer changing its pattern. Why? Here is the explanation. What happens is that we are constantly breathing. With breath, through breath, we are constantly connected to the source of much, much more bigger pool of nourishment in the cosmos. We are constantly receiving not just oxygen, but rather even all that energy and the power and charisma that uses the oxygen as its vehicle. All that is coming, the very source of life is constantly coming in us, and whatever is in us, that is being deposited in the much bigger world, the cosmos, or atmosphere. But one thing happens. Whenever air passes through our left nostril, it gets electrically charged with unique kind of energy long before it reaches our lungs. But when it passes through our left nostril, it has different kind of electrical charge. So before the air reaches our lungs, it has already gotten some unique, coating, a unique input that nostril puts into the air. So the air passing through our right nostril is actively charged. Air passing through our left nostril is passively charged. These active and passive electrical charges, the solar and lunar influence that has been added to our air, makes a big difference to the function of our brain and the function of our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So actively or positively charged air that reaches the lungs instantly gives a very unique kind of message to the entire system when that air, oxygen, that gets absorbed into the blood and reaches the heart. By the time it reaches the heart exactly knows that what kind of air, what kind of oxygen has reached here. Just not the oxygen, but rather what kind of actively or passively charged. How much it is actively charged, how much is passively charged. Or how much is the lunar influence is there in this oxygen, how much is the solar influence is in this oxygen. How much masculine energy has been awakened in this oxygen, how much the feminine energy has been awakened in this oxygen. Heart exactly knows it. And through its electromagnetic waves, heart immediately sends this message to the brain, giving a message that proportionately, actively or passively charged, proportionately more or less actively or passively charged oxygen is on its way for you. And brain, in response to this electromagnetic message, the message that has been sent through its electromagnetic waves from heart to the brain, in response to that, brain immediately prepares itself to greet and treat this whole force of nourishment. And thus, even before that kind of oxygen reaches, even before the oxygen passes the blood-brain barrier, the brain has already given instruction to our sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, to claim its dominance over the other. And thus, the whole mood changes. Our moods are very, very, very closely related to our sympathetic or parasympathetic responses. That is the anatomy of breathing. And this particular knowledge and the practices based on this particular knowledge in tantric literature is called Shiva Swarodaya, or just Swarodaya, the rise of the swara, rise of the uniquely charged breath, containing very unique aspect of, unique quality of, unique blessings of Shiva, the consciousness. That is why this whole science, whole wisdom is called Shiva Swarodaya. Shiva, and then Swara, and you can split it, Udaya. Udaya means rise of swara. Udaya means rise, swara means breath, which contains unique quality, characteristics, blessings, powers, and blessings of Shiva, consciousness. This phenomena takes place by the time we breathe and by the time the breath is passing right through our left or right nostril. And it's always, most of the times, either left nostril is relatively more open or the right nostril is relatively more open. And therefore, whichever nostril is more active, more open, it is natural that more air will pass through that nostril and less air will pass through the other nostril. And this way, only when our Sushumna, the central nadi, is really awakened, and that means when our left and right nostril are perfectly, exactly in same proportion opened. With the exception of that particular condition, always we are taking more air in either through right nostril or through the left nostril. And therefore, proportionately speaking, our air that we breathe in, the oxygen that we take in, is either actively more charged actively or more charged passively. Either it has more of the quality of the sun or has more of the quality of the moon. It has more of the quality of our masculine energy or it has more of the quality of our feminine energy. And that is in response to that, our entire mood is prepared. And that mood, more subtle emotional aspect of ourselves, reflects on our sympathetic and parasympathetic responses. What does it mean? The air that we breathe, let's say more proportionately more through our right nostril, goes into our lungs. And at some point, it's cleaned and it's new fresh oxygen is absorbed into our blood stream, and then it goes to the heart, and then heart pumps and supplies that blood to the whole body, And 70% of the oxygen that we contain, that we take in, 70% of it is consumed burnt by the brain. Brain, which is only 1/7 of the total weight of our body, consumes somewhere around 70% of our oxygen. Now, what happens is, it is a simple phenomena. Right nostril goes to the left brain. The right nostril is connected to the left brain, and left nostril is connected to our right brain. Left nostril connected to the left brain, and as we know that left brain is logical, left brain is masculine, left brain is, so-called, tit for tat, whereas the right brain, which is connected to the left nostril or lateral left nostril, that is connected to the right brain, that is more artistic, more feminine, more gentle, more kind, more tolerant, with more greater degree of patience, less logical, more connected to the heart aspect of ourselves. Therefore, automatically, our left and right aspect of our brain become active. If the more air has passed through our right nostril, automatically that air long before reaches our brain, the oxygen long before that oxygen reaches our brain, electromagnetic wave arising continuously that arises from our heart automatically tells the left brain, get ready. If the more air has passed through our left nostril and thus is charged with more of the lunar energy, feminine energy, goes into our lungs, from there goes into our heart, from there it is being pumped, but long before the blood pumped by heart reaches our brain, the electromagnetic waves continuously arising from the heart reaches the brain and tells our right side of the brain, get ready. That is how the subtle process is going on deep inside us, and that is called science of breath in Sanskrit language, known as Shiva Swarodaya. For the lack of more appropriate terminology, we may call it science of breath. Science of breath, Tantra Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, science of chakra, all they are intertwined. Without understanding the subtle functions of the dynamics of our nadis, the energy current, it is extremely difficult to really understand what is Tantra talking about. What are these so-called gods and goddesses, yantras, mantras, chakras? And why to bother even to work with our navel center, with our nostril? Why to bother, doing this pranayama, this bandha and that mudra, this lock? That is why it is extremely crucial to understand the dynamics of our energy currents, nadis, their connection with the much, much more subtle forces within us, the solar energy, lunar energy, and the energy that is purely balanced energy that we call Sushumna. Thus, this Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, these three nadis, they play the greatest important role in the formation of our chakras. The Ida, the left nadi, energy current. Pingala, the right one. Sushumna, the central one. These three nadis are in the formation of each chakras. These three nadis are involved, and then all other nadis, they come in and go. They come and go. Somewhere, some nadis are there, and some nadis are not there. But Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna are always there in the formation of every single chakra in the body. It is the function of Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna that directly or indirectly supports or opposes the functions of all other energy currents. That is why our chakras, each chakras are so different from each other. And yet they are connected to the one central system that has three main nadis, Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna. This is the dynamics of nadis and chakras and its influence, and especially these three nadis and its influence on our emotional life and spiritual life.